Even though Brad Stevens was working the phones this NBA trade deadline, the Boston Celtics still have one open roster spot that they've had this whole entire season for this very moment. We're getting into the buyout market, and we'll see some possibilities of the Celtics possibly going after a guy in the buyout market, or even looking at extending a guy in neemias to a full standardized contract. We're going to be diving in, debating what is the right move for the Boston Celtics, looking at some possible guys that the Celtics could get on the buyout market on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. But before we dive into this Boston Celtics content, 78% of you guys are not subscribed. Would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. The thousands of you guys that watch these videos that aren't subscribed, that want to make sure you stay up to date on daily Boston Celtics news, hit that subscribe button, as you definitely will not regret it. But let's dive in on this insane info as we get into this episode. Make sure to grab a snack, as it is going to be a jam-packed episode as we dive in, looking at the Celtics being patient after the trade deadline. Now, the Boston Celtics have always had this 15th roster spot open. It was expected that they would use the Grant Williams traded player exception to go out and get said 15th roster spot guy, and they would hold pat with their lineup. Unfortunately, Brad Stevens likes to throw a little bit of curveballs for all these Celtics fans. Rumors, interested in all these guys, but does not trade for them. Trades Lamar Stevens for a flip in Xavier Tillman, and then uses the traded player exception for Grant Williams to get a guy in Jaden Springer. Then trades out Dalano Banton to hold open one more roster spot for this team. We're going to be diving in, looking at why Brad Stevens is doing this, and looking at some possible ways of people coming in or possibly extending one of our own guys. We want to look, this is from Jared Weiss, who says that Brad Stevens says the Celtics will be patient monitoring the buyout market, but they don't expect to find someone who will vault into the rotation. Still evaluating whether to promote neemias to a full standardized contract. And if you guys don't know, neemias is on a two-way deal and has some restrictions for his contract. He can only suit up for the Celtics for 50 games, and he's getting near that limit. So if the Celtics do not sign him to a standardized deal, the Celtics would not be able to use him in the playoffs, and he would not be able to come up again for the rest of the year. Therefore, he'd be in the G League developing. And we'll get into a video later this week or maybe this weekend discussing the implications of neemias possibly staying in the G League. But I'm a big fan of neemias. I know a lot of you guys on this Celtics Digest channel are as well. And he's had some bright spots. And I think that if he does deserve this 15th roster spot, it could be great for him. But if the Celtics go after for a veteran on the buyout market as well, I think it could help them out too. If we want to keep looking, this is from Noah Dalzell, who kind of just further amplifies what I just said, that Brad Stevens is still evaluating neemias as the potential person for the 15th roster spot, but admits that Neemi's done a great job. So Brad Stevens sees what Neemi's been doing. He likes the play style that Neemi's been having, but after seeing the Celtics go after a guy in Xavier Tillman, who's, and already a big man to add to that front court, and with Luke Kornet kind of playing some minutes over neemias, I don't know if the Celtics necessarily will go after another big man. But like I mentioned, the Celtics were interested in all these rumors. Sadiq Bey, John Konchar, Kelly Olynyk. And they went and got guys like Xavier Tillman and Jaden Springer, who they had no connection to for the mass media. So Brad Stevens could realistically do anything. He could go out and get a guard. He could go out and get a wing. He could bring in another big man. Or he could sign neemias. The limits are endless with Brad Stevens. But as we dive in, I kind of want to look at neemias' stats, kind of analyze what he's been doing for the Celtics. So 4.8 total points, 4.5 rebounds on 0.5 assists, 60% shooting from the field, 75% from free throw, and we've seen neemias have some bright spots for this Celtics roster. I personally was a big fan of him in the preseason. Then we started to see him in the season a little bit, needs to work on some stuff, finishing at the rim, kind of, staying strong, not fouling as much for the Boston Celtics, which I think are some things he could learn in the G League and develop and getting a little bit better at. We've already seen him be a G League MVP. We know he can dominate in the G League. We just need to get him a little bit more caliber experience to get ready for that NBA job. But I think that neemias could be a solid big for the Celtics if they go the route of keeping neemias, having him be the 15th man on this roster, and being set up for the rest of the season. Now, though, if the Celtics do want to pertain the buyout market, it is going to be a little difficult. Like Brad Stevens says, he's wanting to monitor the buyout market since the beginning of the season, and he wants to be patient. So the Celtics might see a guy get waived in the next couple of days that they might pursue, and that could be something that could open up our eyes a little bit more. But if we want to look at this tweet from Evan Cedery, he had at the end of yesterday some players involved in the trade deadline moves that will join the buyout market. Some of these names were Spencer Dinwiddie, Marcus Morris, Joe Harris, Killian Hayes, Robin Lopez, and Daniel House. He also mentioned that Kyle Lowry, who was not dealt but was dealt previously in last week from the Miami Heat to the Charlotte Hornets, will also be expecting a buyout soon as well. And if we want to keep looking, late last night, he tweeted out another tweet that says that Danilo Gallinari will be also joining the buyout market. Plenty of title contending teams that will aggressively be pursuing him. We also saw late last night from the Charlotte Hornets, 3 of their guys get waived. They waived a guy in Ish Smith, Frank Ntilikina, and a guy in James Bouknight. So we want to kind of dive in and look at some of these options for the Boston Celtics at the buyout market. We can kind of look and see, obviously, with the Boston Celtics, like I mentioned, they are a second apron team. They cannot go out and get anybody from the buyout market. The rules have changed, ladies and gentlemen, and with them being a second apron team, they cannot sign a guy whose contract is over the $12.4 million or the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Therefore, the Boston Celtics, when looking at some of these guys, Spencer Dinwiddie, $20 million, cannot go out and acquire him via buyout. Marcus Morris makes $14 to $15 million, cannot acquire him via buyout. Joe Harris makes $17 million, cannot acquire him via buyout. But guys like Killian Hayes, who's on a rookie deal, the Celtics can go acquire him on a buyout. A guy on Robin Lopez, who's on a minimum deal, the Celtics can go get him. Daniel House, another switchable wing from the Sixers that they wanted to move off of, they can go acquire him. And even a guy in Danilo Gallinari, who I want to kind of preface on in this video, kind of bringing him back to Boston, is a guy they can go after. Like I mentioned with the Hornets, those 3 guys, Bouknight, Ish Smith, and Frank Ntilikina, I do believe they can go after, as well as those guys are under the $12.4 million deal. Honestly, I don't see the Celtics going after any guards, so I realistically don't see Killian Hayes coming. I don't see a guy, any of the guys from the Hornets. Maybe Ish Smith for his veteran playoff experience, maybe bring him on a title contender like he was with Denver, could elevate his game a little bit, but that's the most realistic guard. I don't see them going after James Bouknight. I don't see them going after Frank Ntilikina, and obviously the guys that they can't acquire, I don't see them going after. But out of the 3 guys that we can mention, Robin Lopez, Daniel House, and Danilo Gallinari, I think Danilo Gallinari would be a perfect fit for this team. Like we mentioned, Danilo obviously wanted to play for the Celtics last season when he signed with the team, but suffered an injury in Eurobasketball that sidelined him the whole entire season. When the Celtics had to make moves to acquire Kristaps Porzingis, he was one of the contracts that had to be traded. But from being traded from Boston to Washington, and now from Washington to Detroit, and being waived by Detroit, he then ultimately can re-sign with the Celtics. He cannot re-sign with the Pistons, but he can go back to the Celtics if he would like to. Danilo Gallinari is having a little bit of a quiet season. 7 points, 2.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 45% shooting from the field, and 35% shooting from 3, with 85% from the free throw. He's obviously a veteran, a guy who's going to play 10 to 12 minutes a night. He's not going to be asked to be a big-time role for you guys. But for the Boston Celtics, as another shooter and a nice wing, to play a little bit of a Sam Hauser role and have that, Sam Hauser assurance, I think, is great for this Boston Celtics team, especially as he's a little bit more of a power forward position and kind of brings that versatility to that team there. We already have Horford, who's a stretch 4, who can kind of play inside, but having another shooter, I think, would be great and move mountains for this team. Now, I know that Danilo Gallinari, since he's been traded from the Celtics, didn't have some kind words, so he might not want to come back. But after being snubbed in Washington, getting barely any playing time, and having, in Detroit, one really big performance for them in recent games, I think he could be a nice scoring option for this bench unit for the Boston Celtics. We want to look at those other 2 guys as well. Robin Lopez is kind of getting towards the end of his career as a backup center. He could be a 3rd or 4th center if we want to bring in some depth, but I do believe that neemias already excels him in every single which way, so I would not be looking at Robin Lopez. And a guy in Daniel House is another wing defender from the Sixers, who the Celtics could pick up if they want, again, some more wing depth, add to that Jaden Springer type build, that defensive type wing with Daniel House. But honestly, not the biggest proponent of Daniel House. I don't really think he makes us or moves the needle that much. I think Danilo Gallinari would help out what the Boston Celtics need a little bit more than a guy in Daniel House. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you want Brad Stevens to pursue Neemias Queta with that 15th roster spot, or do you think he should go into the buyout market, look at some of these guys like Danilo Gallinari, possibly Ish Smith, Robin Lopez, and Daniel House? But let me know in the comment section what you guys think down below. I'm Bruce Velez. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Celtics Digest, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.